Welcome everyone to the 605 Media and Entertainment Podcast. I'm joined here with Bonnie Halsey Dutton, who is a local Spearfish artist, owner of Artifacts, Antiques, and Art, and also the leader of adult art education workshops here in the Northern Hills. Thanks for joining us, Bonnie. How are you this morning?
I'm good, Dustin. Thank you.
So, to start off, do you maybe want to introduce yourself and tell us a bit of your own history with being here in the Northern Hills?
Okay, I love living in the Black Hills. I lived here as a child. My family moved away, we came back. We moved away, we came back, and this has been a real cycle in my life. It keeps calling me back. Met my husband Dave here in high school. We followed our careers elsewhere, lived in different areas of the country. And when we had an opportunity in '96, we moved back here for good and haven't really left since. I've been a high school teacher, and I noticed the same pattern with my students as they say, oh, I can't wait to leave. I'm going to go and, see the world. And so many of them come back. So there's a magic here.
Yeah, I mean, going to school here, I've seen it. So I think it's almost a pattern. I just had Eric Scavang on the last episode, and he actually said the exact same thing. So that's super interesting. So in this area, I would say you're mostly known for being an artist and being involved with a lot of the art organizations and communities here in the Northern Hills. Do you want to maybe talk a bit about your history with art specifically?
Okay. I always kind of combined my art with being an art educator. I taught at Spearfish High School and middle school for 11 years. And then had my own home studio, worked there, brought people into the studio and taught workshops in that way. I also travel abroad and teach in Portugal in particular. And that keeps bringing me back to Spearfish, because now it's like, well, I'm going to Portugal. I could be doing that very same thing right here in Spearfish.
So with going to Portugal, that is part of the workshops you teach. How long have you been doing that for?
Coming up this April will be my third
year.
It's fairly new yet for me.
Okay. Do you want to maybe talk about how were you the one that started that program then as well?
No, I didn't. When we lived in Philadelphia, I met an artist friend, and this has been 25 years ago, and she was originally from the United Kingdom, UK, and she moved back home. And she makes her living as an artist, and she does art workshops worldwide. And one of the best that she has ever taught at is at Oleau. It's called the Art in the Algarve School. And she connected me with the owners of that school, who then invited me to come over and be one of their instructors. So, of course, as part of that, I recruit locally, as well as have international students that sign up for my classes. So that has kind of caused a whole migration from Spearfish, South Dakota to the Algarve region of Portugal.
Okay. So can you talk maybe a little bit about like the organization process of that then? Like, so you got involved with this person, and then you kind of were like, oh, well, I can bring this back here in Spearfish. And so then, I'm assuming being in this area for so long, you already knew a lot of people that were involved in the same things as you, which is painting and art and stuff. I guess, are you trying to kind of grow that into something more still, or what is kind of the process of all of that?
Yeah, part of it, the whole joy of creating art is sharing art. And so that's been a big part of my engagement with people, is to create experiences and, bring people along. So that's kind of the recruiting process, although I could just go over there and teach to the European people who sign up for classes. It's part of the fun is taking people locally who would like to travel, maybe need a little guidance in doing so, and share that experience with people that then I can engage with when we come back. I oftentimes will get together with the people that traveled for these workshops, and we do things together now that we're back here in the Black Hills region.
Do you have people coming from Portugal to here at all ever?
No, I haven't reciprocated that at this point. I did work with this artist friend and brought artists from France and England over, but that's been about, I suppose about 10 years ago that I did a reciprocal artist exchange program.
So you also have like quite a few just like classes in general that are specifically for the Northern Hills area. I know you've had like painting workshops just like in a circle, like at the park, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Is that also part of the adult art education workshops?
Yeah, it actually stemmed from a conversation with one of my students who had traveled to Portugal with me. And we were saying, well, we should continue to paint together now that we're coming back. And it's like, well, of course we should, And so as I got to thinking, well, I'll just give you a call when I'm going to do it, see if you're free, and we'll just do this thing. It started to grow. Again, I like to build relationships, community relationships. So I thought, well, let me start inviting the other people from our travels that might like to do it as well. And so there's a trend right now called pop-ups. They're doing it for everything, restaurants and that type of thing. And so 2 years ago, I started pop-up art events. And I invited the people I knew and invited people to sign up that would like to be notified when this would be a last-minute thing. So pop-up worked really well in the Black Hills because of the weather forecast. I would look at the weather forecast. I partnered with local spearfish organizations like the DC Booth Fish Hatchery or the Heritage Center and cleared it with them that we could bring people up. Everything was done free. So I demonstrated, I did all the work to get people involved just to build art community, just to see what would happen. It was kind of a social experiment. And so that has led to this year, which I've done 2 pop-up events and had the gallery downtown, our business, be kind of the central hub where we start. That way, if the weather would be bad, we could stay and work in the gallery, or we could take it on the road.
Yeah. Okay. Going back, like, I was going to say a little bit, but maybe like a lot of it. What was kind of your first, I don't know, maybe art experience that kind of, then it was like domino effect. You just got really involved with it for the rest of your life.
Yeah. I got a fine arts degree, Bachelor of Arts, and business minor. And so I was always a practical kind of a person that I had to combine my art with something. And ironically, I had a gallery / antique shop right out of college. And now all these years later, we're back to that. But while I was trying to find how I was going to be an artist as well as, pay the bills, I looked into the Georgia Council for the Arts because we lived down in Atlanta at the time. And I applied and got accepted to that program. And through that, I got placed in a private school for a 12-week residency. Now, prior to that, I hadn't had education classes. I really didn't want to be an educator, but I thought, well, this is something that might be kind of interesting. And now, all these years later, I have a PhD in art education. So that opened the door to another way to be an artist that I hadn't really considered in my undergraduate studies.
And you were an art teacher for 11 years, you said?
Here in Spearfish.
For middle and high school. Do you want to talk about, was that you came back from Atlanta, and then was that kind of the first venture when you got back?
No, it was opening the door into private school education that kind of opened education for me. So I got a full-time teaching position at a private school, which has different requirements. And so then I went back and got all of my education education to substantiate the degree. And then I went into public school education. I've also been an adjunct at Black Hills State University and taught all age levels then. So through private school, I started with classes pre-kindergarten through 8th grade. Again, just not thinking, I don't know what I can do with kids that age. And just trying to challenge what I could teach and what they could learn. And it was amazing how receptive these young people were to art instruction. Pretty soon I had parents saying, we got a catalog from the Metropolitan Museum of Art. And my first grader said, that looks like a Claude Monet on the cover. It was like, wow, that was very validating.
That's awesome. Do you want to kind of talk about the experience of just maybe, how do I put this? Do you want to talk about the experience of teaching art specifically in like this area and specifically for the public school for middle and high school?
Not quite sure how to answer that.
Okay. I guess, could you compare it maybe to the art education that you're doing now outside of this, like in public school setting?
Okay, what I have graduated toward is adult art education. because I feel it's an underserved population. We do have, art in schools. We have a lot of events and things for children, but a lot of times adults need that same type of encouragement. So I get a lot of reward out of working with people that maybe have tabled their love of art while they were pursuing their career and now have time or energy, or the desire is so strong they can no longer deny themselves. I really enjoy working with adults in particular, as a different population to educate.
Do you, because, okay, so like when I've gotten asked to like paint or draw it, like publicly before, and I'm always like, I don't know if I really want to do that. Do you have maybe like some stories where you've had adults that were kind of like, oh, that might be fun, but I don't know, I'm not good at art, like, and you're able to kind of help motivate them to feel comfortable in partaking in that?
That is a good question. And that's something that I have found that I just have a unique ability to do. A lot of people can't do it. I think it comes from teaching young people, elementary age kids. Demonstrations had to be very quick. And I also had to have crowd control at the same time, eye contact with them and keep the kids paying attention while I showed them what the project was going to be. Same thing translated into high school then. Same kind of crowd control issues, kind of keep everybody engaged and not demonstrate too long. I always found that when my demonstration was too long or my project turned out too well, it kind of killed the project. So those that were watching were like, I can't do that. So I learned to keep my demonstrations very short and just use it as a stepping stone to show people how they could start. And then I work individually with them. And so that same approach works extremely well with adults. They don't want to see me paint. It's not a broad Bob Ross video where they're, seeing step by step by step. They're getting this is how I splash color on, now you try it, kind of an approach.
Okay, that makes sense. Your art, let's talk about maybe like your art specifically, which, I mean, I went to the gallery probably a month ago and I was absolutely like mind blown by it. Do you want to talk maybe about your own personal process of like when you go to start painting a piece? Like, do you have like a sort of like inspiration or are you more of a like you see it in front of you, so you're kind of painting what you see?
Oh, thank you, Dustin. I usually start with a preconceived idea of what the subject matter is going to be, but yet it can evolve as I paint. I paint looser the older I get, loosening up my own boundaries a little bit, trying to not be so literal in my interpretations of things. I've been a global traveler, and I find that is really a thread now through my work, using trade beads in particular as a metaphor for different cultures and how they have traversed the globe. And so I kind of start with that mindset in my most recent series of work, not knowing what the final painting is going to look like, but knowing that's how I was going to get there and what the idea was that I wanted to explore.
And do you have maybe like a specific routine that you go for before like you start a piece? Like, is there music you're playing or anything like that?
Yes, music. And I try to have music that doesn't have lyrics, so it gets me into a creative zone. So I'm not maybe mirroring somebody else's creative input as much as I'm just kind of getting into that plane where I lose consciousness of what I'm thinking. It's very meditative to me. So painting is.
So you kind of get in the zone, and then before you know it, you're like, oh, wow, it's been hours.
Okay. And there's a magic to that. It's just like, oh, I can't believe it. I just really let go of myself and let go of time and my thoughts.
Would you say that's probably the best way for you specifically, maybe, is like getting into that sort of zone versus being completely like conscious and aware of like every little detail while you're painting?
Yeah, I think when you want to respond to your materials and what you're painting, it's important to get outside of yourself and not be so analytical in each brushstroke and working. Things have to be a particular way to be correct.
So how long would you say you've been painting for?
I knew I wanted to be an artist when I was 9.
9.
I know that specifically because my uncle decided he wanted to be an artist, and I was 9 at the time, and I was just crushed. I just thought, I can't do it now. I can't do it because they'll think I'm copying him. And so it was a real inner struggle about that. And it turns out that my uncle, my mom, this was his sister, and their mutual sister are all artists. There's something in the genes that made us have to be creative.
So it's almost like a family thing in a sense. Have you kind of all kind of educated each other on different sort of art techniques
for sure.
or anything like that?
Yeah, and I think there's just a thread of support there too, of acceptance of an alternative career choice, because everybody will ask, well, how are you going to make a living as an artist? And so there's been that support from the family underneath it all.
Okay. And so going back, you said you knew you wanted to be an artist at 9 years old. So you were probably painting. Is that when you started painting? Was that 9 years old?
Yeah, painting and drawing. My mom kept a lot of my drawings, so I've got, from 6, 8. She's kind of pointed out a time when she knew I was an artist, and that was, I was in kindergarten, and I remember doing this. I drew a picture and took it to her, and oh, that's nice, Bonnie. That's Santa Claus, right? And it's like, yeah. Look at the back, and she couldn't tell what the back was. It's just like, okay, well, that's nice. Tell me about it. And I go, it's Santa's back. And so then when you flipped it back and forth, you could see I was using the paper to show front and back of Santa. And I realized I had done something really, monumental.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's super creative. Yeah. And so that mindset started at that young of an age, and then it was just basically history from there?
Yeah.
Or was there any
a
point of time where you were like, maybe I should chill out on this or anything like that?
I think there's a lot of little guidance for people along the way of what you're good at. We have to try lots of things. But as an artist, I was always like the class artist. Oh, I'll let Bonnie draw that. She can do that. And so I had a lot of just subtle support from my peers, from my teachers, from my parents. That's like, oh, this is something I am good at. And then it wasn't until I was married that I realized not everybody thinks the same way as I do. Because I could visualize, I could totally visualize what something would look like, and was just kind of flabbergasted that my logical, analytical husband couldn't just see it in his mind's eye like I could.
So then, was there maybe a certain, point? Because, of course, the point you knew that you wanted to do art was at 9. Was there a point where you were like, oh, I like intertwining education and teaching with this other passion?
It really was that accidental thing that happened with the Council for the Arts, where I was put as an artist in a school situation, and all of a sudden I saw that link and saw that I was good at it and that I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the process of kind of seeing that light bulb come on as I was working with students. I just thought, instead of it's not like a babysitting or an activity, I was shaping them, and that was very exciting.
Okay. And you recently have a new venture now, again, kind of new. Apparently,
Yeah.
It's more of a coming back of,
Right.
which is the Artifacts, Antiques, and Art downtown. Do you want to maybe talk about that venture?
Yeah. So as my husband retired recently, and we're just in our late 50s, so it's a little soon to hang up our skates. It's like, oh, what are we going to do next? What's the next chapter? And we'd kind of been looking at what our mutual interests were, along with our son Drew Dutton. And he's just got a mass communications degree from Black Hills State, and I, being an artist, and Dave is an antique aficionado, we just decided to combine our passions and see what we could create.
That's super cool. Let me think how I want to put this. So going back a little bit too, you said when you were doing art, people are always like, well, okay, that's awesome, but how are you going to pay the bills? It sounds like not only, you're an artist, but you've also had that entrepreneur mindset kind of that you can intertwine together. Do you want to talk about, I guess, what that mindset is?
Yeah, it's a practical mindset. They say that you're right-brained or left-brained, and I think I'm uniquely in the middle. I think creatively, but I also think very logically. And I think a lot of artists struggle with that as far as, deadlines and the paperwork and that type of thing. You talked a little bit, or asked me a little bit about my day or how my process is. And I learned from this artist friend from the UK in particular that it's really important to have a daily routine. So not to wake up and think, oh, I feel creative today, or I don't. You have to think, I am alive today, I'm going to do my art. Whether it be I'm going to take brush to paper, or if it's I'm going to work on my social media work today, but to have a routine that this is a job just like any other job, I think is how you can succeed as an artist. And you have to do the nitty-gritty, less desirable part of the art. It's not just the creating the art, it's the marketing of the art. And it's getting out there, talking to people like I'm doing with you today.
Yeah, perfect. Touching too on the whole left brain, right brain thing. I think in general, what I've been learning a lot about creativity lately is, of course, there are those moments where you're like, oh wow, I'm feeling super creative. I'm just like writing down all these ideas. And then there are days where, like you said, you wake up and you're like, man, I'm not feeling creative. But what I've come to find is, even if you're not feeling creative, as long as you're like, okay, I'm gonna paint today when I'm not being creative, and then all of a sudden that creativity starts to spur as you just force yourself to get started by being self-disciplined.
Exactly.
Would you say you are in the same boat, or you've experienced that yourself?
Oh yeah. Sometimes if you just start with a doodle, you just start moving the paintbrush on something. You just start the process. Even if maybe you have a cold and you're not feeling like you really want to work that day, keeping your mind and like your brain and your hands working together, keeping that connection going is important. Anytime I've taken a hiatus from painting, it's kind of like if you would imagine being a tennis player or a piano player and you take a month off, your game is not going to be as good as it was 30 days prior. And it's the same way with your art. Keeping that connection going is an ongoing process.
And when you say you take hiatuses, is that because you just get busy, or is that like to regain some sort of like basically I need a break from this, otherwise I'm going to get burnt out? Or what is kind of the process there?
I've never found that I get burnt out with art. That's but it's usually other things that invade into my life that I have to take a break. So it's possibly my life forcing me to take a much needed break too. But if I could just kind of keep steamrolling, that's my work ethic, is to keep every day doing art if possible. But those life events that cause you to take a break maybe are kind of a godsend.
Yeah. I know we're kind of jumping all over the place here, but maybe it's better that way because it keeps it more entertaining, maybe. So now that I'm just going to call it your business, versus it is kind of a longer name when you're actually like talking about it on a podcast. I didn't even think about it until I did it. So, but with the business, it's now established. The doors have been open for a while. Is there kind of maybe an overall like goal that or something you want to see happen like long term over the course of its existence with the shop?
I want to grow the art community as far as my part of the business, the art end of it. I have a gallery with a workspace. I'd like to have ongoing art workshops that I'm offering monthly. And I also would like to have it be a showcase for other local artists. So down the road, my plan is to bring other artists and their work in and offer their workshops as part of it, because I really want to grow the art community in Spearfish. We have a vibrant art community, yet we don't have a lot of outlet for exhibition and sharing what we do. And coming into the social media aspect of it, there are unlimited possibilities with this idea of the pop-up kind of thing. There's a lot you can do, spur of the moment or tying other events together. I'm interested in just the concept of that and what could happen.
And you've already been doing some of these workshops, around and also now at the new business. How have those been going, and have you seen any like new faces there and stuff? Yeah.
The social media now is really taking off. Prior to opening the business, I had my own artist like Facebook page and website, and then I had an art education Facebook page that I started because I wanted to post events about the Algarve and the Portugal events. Now I'm kind of in a transition where I'm trying to maintain 3 Facebook pages, and that's like crazy. So now when you look at the artifacts, antiques, and art page, it's a little bit, there's a dissonance because I'm talking about the art and then we're talking about the antiques. And so merging those two things together, it's going to be an educational process, to educate our public that is looking at that page to see, well, what's going on over there? Maybe that's the intrigue. Maybe try to get them to come in and see what is going on over there.
Yeah. And I think to some degree, in my opinion, even though at first they might seem completely separate, like antiques from art, like how does this, but really they kind of intertwine. Art has its history. And if you go to the business, I mean, there's a lot of art there that isn't just antiques. Like you guys sell records, you guys have old pieces of art and stuff like that. So, I mean, would in your own words, is there a way that you kind of said, okay, yes, these are 3 separate things, but they intertwine, and can you explain like how these things intertwine together?
We did it with our main title, artifacts. And so when I was looking up how would I define artifacts, it's products of human workmanship. And so antiques themselves are products of human workmanship as well as art. I've been bringing in artisan work, and so we have some artisan-made local artworks that are also being showcased in the shop. And I'm planning to have that grow as we move forward, to try to give a platform for other artist-made things, not just paintings.
Okay. And how do I put this? Does Dave have any like sort of plans to maybe do workshops on like antiques or like sort of,
Not at this point. We're looking at maybe branching outside of Spearfish and doing the eBay approach, because a lot of what we have has a broader audience than just Spearfish itself. So no, he hasn't talked about going to be teaching workshops in that respect, but he is very interested in going out in the community and giving talks, as he's done in the past. He's gone to schools and taken some of his World War II collection. He's shared his World War II collection at various conferences and at Peer. And so I know he'll be more involved in the speaking part of it and sharing in the state.
Okay. That's super cool.
Yeah.
So another thing too is with your workshops for the adult art education, we were talking before we started the podcast that there might be plans of kind of pushing more trips to Portugal. And is there any expansion in the work or anything like that too?
I'm going to just teach one more coming up in April of 2020. And from there, I'm going to take it by ear. It's been a year-to-year basis. The type of thing with the Algarve class, and we're pretty landlocked being here in Spearfish, South Dakota, so it's very expensive to get over there. So largely I do it because it helps me to grow as an artist. The time spent with the people that travel with me or to do the workshop with me is valuable to me, but I pay for my own plane ticket, and basically it's a break-even situation where it gets me to Europe, and then I could take some additional time. But it's more the intrinsic value of sharing the art making experience with people that keeps it going. So I can't promise that it's going to grow and it's going to continue. It's a year-by-year decision.
That makes sense. How long have you been doing it for?
3 years.
3 years. Yeah. So you've done 3 trips to Portugal then?
Yeah, well, I've got the 3rd coming up, but I've done some other ones.
Okay.
When I taught at the high school, actually, is where I got really involved in traveling abroad, taking 11 trips with high school students, or 8 trips with high school students, and 3 trips on my own to go visit my friend over in the UK.
Okay.
And so a lot of my art making has been involved with European travel. I also have a very good friend that lives in France that I go visit.
Okay. On maybe that note, is there any other specific countries or places that you really, maybe not with a group, but maybe just yourself, that you really want to go there and explore the art?
When I was at the University of Arizona working on my PhD, I had the chance to go to Italy. I took a 6 weeks in Italy and took 3 courses at the time. So I was very busy Yet I was so very happy, to be able to study art while in Italy. And I wouldn't mind just going back and kind of retracing those steps to re-engage with things that I wanted to do and didn't have time to do. So Italy holds a fondness in my heart. And there's so many beautiful, amazing places in the world that I think it's a little bit of a mistake to just keep going back to one that you enjoyed. I'd love to go to Belgium and further north into the Netherlands, and I haven't explored Germany at all. Spain, very limited. So yeah, there's a lot on the horizon.
Okay. Anything interest of like maybe Asia or South America or anything like that?
A little less so, and I don't know if that's because I really like European history. I'm less versed in like the Asian and South American art, so I'm just a little less intrinsically drawn to it, but I am not ruling it out.
Yeah,
No.
fair enough. I think I consider myself an artist too in a different way, and I think every artist or even just creative in general kind of has their own maybe style in terms of art from like specific countries that they kind of get attached to or whatever. And so, with yours being maybe Europe, everybody has something else. So somebody would probably has never been to Europe but loves to keep going back to Australia, let's say. So
Yes.
it definitely makes
Yep.
sense.
Yep.
So, and I'm assuming when you go on these trips to Europe and other countries, you probably get pretty inspired
Oh,
there.
definitely.
Do you
Yeah.
come back just like I can't wait to come back and paint?
Yes. Yeah. It's an infusion of excitement. And again, just speaking of Italy, I got to go to Venice while I was studying at the University of Arizona. And of course, that's where they make glass. And that's where a lot of the glass trade beads originated in their middle cycle. I mean, they were discovered by Chinese and Romans, and then the technology was lost and then regained.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that was really exciting to be where the glass that I enjoyed painting originated from.
Okay. So that's cool. Have you ever had any other experiences where you were painting something beforehand and then was able to see it later?
I think I would translate that to artists that I've seen their work in books, and then during my world travels going to major museums and seeing the actual work on the wall, like Gustav Klimt, for example, and just like, oh my gosh, it's like seeing Brad Pitt. It's like seeing a celebrity. It's like, oh my gosh, there it is. And being mesmerized by something that had an impact on me.
Have you ever gone into maybe like one of these art museums or exhibits and seen something that you didn't even know was there at the exhibit by chance?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. In traveling, it's just sometimes happenstance what there maybe is a special show going on that you didn't anticipate going to see. Or there's even rooms that are blocked off for whatever reason. I've gone to the Louvre now 5 different times and never been in the Vermeer wing because it's always been closed on the day that we went there. It was just like, or one time I actually got there and we didn't have as much time, and I navigated to the back of the museum, and they were like sweeping people out literally with a broom. You couldn't come in because they were closing the gallery. It's like, no, I'm from South Dakota. You don't understand. I have to see it.
Yeah. Oh man, that's got to be hard because then you're on the plane. You're like, dang, I was this
I was
close.
so close. I was like looking past the guards so I could at least say I saw it on the wall.
Oh dang,
Yeah.
That makes sense. The reason I asked that question, I was in Billings and I went to the art museum and there was an original Andy Warhol painting just there. We had no idea. We kept checking because when we seen it, we were like, oh, it's just a copy, right? No, we looked at all the other paintings around and we're like, no, if it's a copy, it says it's a copy. This literally is an original. So we were shocked because we had no idea that was going to be in there. So I just was wondering if you had that experience. So it sounds like you have.
Oh yeah, it's exciting, and even being in a city, going into a business, all of a sudden it's like, what? Like my older son Tyler has talked about his law firm has a Liechtenstein. And it's just like, it's a pop art piece that he recognized and he went and looked at. It's like, yeah, they actually own a Liechtenstein. It's on the wall.
Dang.
Yeah.
What for art, what here in the Northern Hills or Spearfish, what inspires you the most with your art?
It's almost cathedral-like to be in Spearfish Canyon. It's to me like going to church in a better way, because it's just so quiet. You can find a place that you're totally isolated and you're at one with nature. There's a magic to that, like no other place that I've ever been. Maybe I feel at home to go and kind of be off by myself there, but yeah, that inspires me to paint. I do a lot of plein airs where you're painting right out in the open. I'll do watercolors, and I've done oils in plein air. And then I take a lot of photographs, so I have the imagery to work on during the winter when it's not as climatic.
If somebody wanted to get involved with your art workshops, is it open to anybody, or
Yes,
how do they
it
get
is.
involved?
The pop-up events that I do are totally free. And if you would like to get on the notification list, just go to my website, www.bonniehalseydutton.com, and sign up for the newsletter. And then you'll know I send it out monthly, just kind of talking about art events. The newsletter's only 2 months old. I'm going to start showcasing other art events that are happening in the hills when I can find out enough in advance, so that I'm not, bombarding people's inboxes, but to say this is coming up, this is something you might want to take a look at, and try to be a place of community that people can look at doing art with other people. I think there's a real need for that. As artists, we isolate ourselves. And then my workshops and things that I'll be doing, including the Algarve trips, will be posted on that website.
Okay, awesome. And is there any other ventures coming up for you?
I'm going to be doing more of an involved 3-week long plein air workshop, taking advantage of Spearfish Canyon in September. I'm taking August off just because of the rally, and there's just so much activity. People are busy. So I'll be hitting the workshops, offering things in September and October in particular. And then throughout the winter, when a lot of us have downtime and need that creative spark, that little burst of color in our lives.
Perfect. And would the website kind of be the best way to stay up to date with what you're doing, or where people can kind of,
or our Facebook page, Artifacts, Antiques, and Art, we'll be posting things there. But to get a little bit more heads up in advance, again, the www.bonniehalseydutton.com is where the newsletter is, and that would be probably the best way. Again, it's my business, but it's also my intent to unite people. So it's a good way to be with other creatives.
Perfect. Before we kind of close off, is there anything else you want listeners to know?
No, the just thing, follow your bliss. We talked about my apprehension and just the little fears planted in my head about, how are you going to make a living as an artist? And there's a lot of ways to live life creatively. Each day can be a work of art if you think about it. How can you do it that's not like everybody else? What can you do to add that extra spark to make your life, your day, have that special feel? That's what I'd encourage. There's a lot of making art and living life outside of the box that can, be infused into any career.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Dustin. I appreciate you doing the vlog. This is exciting.
Yeah, for sure. And thank you all for listening, and we are excited to have you join us on the next one.